The discovery. The grand hall of the Galactic Council was illuminated by 1,000 shimmering lights, each one a testament to the diverse species that inhabited the galaxy. It was a place of unity, peace, and progress, or so humanity had been led to believe. Admiral James Walker, standing at the center of the hall, felt his stomach churn with disgust. The ornate chamber, adorned with alien symbols and glowing architecture, felt foreign to him now. He had once been proud to be a part of the Council, a beacon of human achievement. But now, with the encrypted data pad in his hands, he felt nothing but betrayal. "Send the confirmation," he muttered under his breath, tapping a sequence of commands into his neural link. The connection between his mind and the data system was instantaneous, the transfer of information flowing through his consciousness like a cold wave. Walker knew his team on Earth was already processing the information, piecing together the final parts of a puzzle that would change everything. For years, Earth had been a member of the Galactic Council, a supposedly peaceful alliance of planets that promoted cooperation, diplomacy, and shared progress. But the truth, as Walker had discovered, was far darker. Beneath the surface of galactic unity, something sinister had been happening. Humanity had been lied to, manipulated, and exploited. The data pad in his hand contained irrefutable proof. Detailed plans for mass genetic harvesting of Earth's population, biological weapons research using human test subjects, and the systematic plundering of Earth's resources for the benefit of other species. He could hardly stomach it. For years, the Council had presented itself as a noble institution, a place where all species could come together and thrive. But in reality, humanity had been nothing more than a tool, a resource to be exploited by those who called themselves allies. The very beings Walker had worked alongside, who had welcomed humanity into their fold, had viewed them as little more than lab rats. His stomach turned, and his fists clenched in anger. "Admiral, we've broken through another encryption layer," came the voice of his most trusted analyst, Commander Laura Reynolds. Her tone was calm, but Walker could hear the strain beneath it. They had uncovered something monumental, and it was clear that it wasn't just a small group of corrupt individuals. This was a conspiracy that reached to the very heart of the Galactic Council. Walker looked up, his eyes meeting those of the Council members, each of whom seemed oblivious to the storm that was brewing beneath the surface. They were listening to a representative from the Xanthi, an insectoid species from a distant galaxy, speak about future trade agreements. The Xanthi's multifaceted eyes glimmered with excitement as they detailed their plans for mutual cooperation, unaware that Walker's mind was far from their words. His thoughts were back on Earth, racing with the implications of what he had just uncovered. "Admiral, I need you to hear this," Laura continued, her voice tinged with urgency. "We found the final transmission. It confirms everything." Walker felt a chill run down his spine. The data transmission Laura had referenced was the final piece of the puzzle, one that had been missing for weeks. It was a confirmation of the Council's true intentions, and it would change the course of human history forever. He activated his neural link again, and within moments, the holographic display in front of him flickered to life. The image of Earth appeared, a vibrant blue planet, spinning slowly in the dark void of space. But as Walker's eyes focused on the display, it shifted, revealing the dark side of the planet that no one had ever seen before. The screen was filled with images of covert military operations, shadowy figures in lab coats working in secretive research facilities, and images of human citizens being taken from their homes in the dead of night. They were being used as test subjects, their DNA altered and manipulated by the very beings they had trusted. Walker's heart pounded in his chest as he absorbed the horrifying reality of what his species had been subjected to. The Council had known about these operations. They had been complicit in it all. And now, humanity was on the verge of discovering the truth. What would they do when they learned how their so-called allies had been using them? Walker's thoughts were interrupted as the room began to hum with energy. The Council members were becoming restless, sensing the unease that had begun to ripple through the chamber. Walker could see their eyes darting toward him. Sensing that something was wrong, the smooth facade of diplomacy was beginning to crack. His hand tightened around the datapad. The time had come. He had to act, and he had to act fast. If humanity was to survive, they needed to strike first. "Admiral, we've isolated the next phase of their plans." Laura's voice came through his neural link, breaking through the tension that gripped him. "They've initiated a full-scale deployment. We need to stop them before they complete the operation." Walker glanced at the council members, their faces still unaware of the looming disaster. It was then that he made a decision that would change everything. He couldn't trust the council anymore. He couldn't wait for them to act. The fate of Earth, of humanity, was in his hands now. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered, his voice calm but filled with resolve. "We're going to show them what happens when you underestimate humanity." With a single command, the countdown began. Walker knew that this was just the beginning. What followed would be the most daring, dangerous, and bold mission humanity had ever undertaken. The Galactic Council would never see it coming. The Silent War. The stars outside the Galactic Council's Grand Hall seemed distant and cold, as though even the cosmos itself could sense the coming storm. As Admiral James Walker's orders rippled through the communication channels, the weight of what was about to unfold settled heavily on his shoulders. He could hear the steady pulse of his heart, his thoughts racing, knowing that there was no turning back now. The ships were already preparing, the first wave of humanity's vengeance taking shape. The data that Walker had uncovered would not remain hidden for long. His command was simple, yet profound. Humanity would take the first strike. The fleets had been mobilized. Thousands of ships, armed and ready, began their course toward the rendezvous points. The data transmission had been sent to Earth's command center, where the world's leaders were already formulating a response to the shocking revelations. The plans for retaliation were now in motion, and Walker was at the helm of it all. But as the Admiral made his way down the sleek metallic corridors of the Galactic Council's central complex, he couldn't shake the feeling that something more was afoot. The Council members, the very beings he had once called allies, were far from innocent in the deception. The images on the holographic display had painted a clear picture. Earth's population had been systematically targeted by their so-called galactic partners, but this was just the surface. Beneath the layers of corruption, there were forces at play that Walker had not yet fully understood. "Admiral, the fleet is ready for your command," came the voice of Commander Laura Reynolds through his neural link. It was calm, but there was an urgency beneath it, an edge of tension that reflected the stakes of their mission. Earth's fight for survival had begun, but the question lingered. Would they be able to hold their ground, or would they be crushed under the weight of the Council's wrath? "Activate the fleet's long-range sensors. Let's find out exactly what we're up against," Walker replied, his voice steady despite the growing storm in his chest. The looming unknowns felt like a dark shadow creeping over them all. He had prepared for war, but he wasn't sure what he was truly facing. What if this wasn't just a battle with the Council? What if there were other, far more dangerous forces hiding in the background, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves? The ships, already equipped with advanced human technology, began to move into position. As they assembled in the darkness of space, they formed a formidable wall of strength, human ingenuity and resilience at their peak. The humans had no allies in this fight. The Xanth, the Keter, and the other species of the Council were all bound by an unspoken pact. Their collective greed, their shared hunger for power, had led them to exploit Earth's resources and people. Now, humanity was fighting back, not with blind fury, but with calculated vengeance. The data Walker had received indicated that a large portion of the Council's fleet had been strategically placed around Earth, waiting to enforce their control. These ships were equipped with advanced technology, far beyond anything humanity had seen before. But Walker was no fool. He knew that Earth had its own hidden assets. Tech developed. "They're operational," came the response. "We've integrated the new quantum engines into the stealth fleet. They'll be able to bypass the Council's sensors and hit their ships from the blind spots. It's our best shot at disrupting their communications before they can call for reinforcements. Walker nodded, his mind spinning with the possibilities. The first strike would be crucial. They needed to cripple the Council's communications, dismantle their control over Earth's orbiting defense systems, and create a breach that humanity could exploit. But the risks were astronomical. One wrong move, one misstep, and humanity would be crushed. This would be a silent war, fought in the shadows, but it would be no less devastating than any conventional conflict. As the ships moved toward the edge of the solar system, Walker's mind returned to the images he had seen earlier, the footage of Earth's population being used as test subjects, their bodies altered in horrific ways by the Council's biological experiments. His thoughts turned to the families, the children, the millions of innocent lives that had been sacrificed in the name of alien experimentation. His resolve hardened. "No more," he whispered to himself. "We fight for them." The fleet slipped into the dark void of space, their mission clear: eliminate the Council's power, expose the corruption, and strike at the heart of those who had enslaved humanity. But even as they sailed into the unknown, Walker's mind kept returning to the one question that haunted him: what if the Council wasn't the true enemy? The truth was, Walker's discovery had uncovered only part of the story. The deeper layers of the conspiracy were still hidden, and as the fleet advanced, Walker couldn't shake the suspicion that something more dangerous than the Council itself was orchestrating this war. The Council had exploited Earth, yes, but there was a far more powerful force operating in the shadows, pulling the strings, and that force had yet to reveal itself. "Admiral, we've reached the first strike zone," came Commander Reynolds' voice again, pulling Walker from his thoughts. The moment of truth had arrived. "Prepare for action, sir. We're ready to deploy." Walker gave a slow nod, his eyes scanning the vast expanse of space. In that moment, he realized that what they were about to do would alter the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. The war was no longer just about survival. It was about justice, about righting the wrongs that had been inflicted upon humanity. The future of their species rested in their hands, and they would not fail. The first wave of humanity's vengeance struck with precision. The fleet moved silently through space, their quantum engines cloaked by advanced stealth technology. With a single command from Walker, the first volley of energy weapons was unleashed. Brilliant beams of light ripped through the darkness, tearing into the Council's outer defenses. The explosions were deafening, sending shockwaves through the void. But the fleet did not stop. Their mission was far from over. "Admiral, we've broken through their outer defenses," Laura reported, her voice filled with a rare note of triumph. "We're inside their perimeter." But Walker's gaze remained fixed on the horizon of space. The battle was only beginning. What came next would determine if humanity could truly fight for its future, or if it would be consumed by the forces that had underestimated it for so long. The silent war had begun. "You said, the hidden threat." The silence of space was pierced by the hum of the human fleet's advanced engines as they navigated through the chaos they had just unleashed. The first wave had successfully penetrated the Council's defenses, but there was no time to celebrate. Walker's mind raced, constantly scanning the data streams, watching for any sign of an unexpected response. The Council had been caught off guard, but Walker had learned the hard way not to underestimate them. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Couture," came the voice of Commander Laura Reynolds, snapping him out of his thoughts. "They're requesting a ceasefire for negotiations." Walker's lips curled into a grim smile. The Couture, a proud and advanced species, had always believed themselves to be superior. They had never once expected humanity to retaliate, let alone strike first. Now their arrogance was being shattered, and they were scrambling for a way to regain control. But Walker wasn't fooled. The Couture were the very ones behind the initial exploitation of Earth, their ships lurking just outside the planet's orbit for years. Their desperation was a sign of weakness, not diplomacy. "Tell them we don't negotiate with terrorists," Walker replied coldly. "Prepare for the next phase. We're not backing down." As Reynolds relayed the message, Walker's thoughts turned once again to the deeper conspiracy that he had only begun to uncover. The data they had gathered was damning, but it was still incomplete. The Council's operations on Earth, biological experiments, resource exploitation, and covert warfare had only been part of the equation. What they hadn't uncovered, what Walker feared most, was the shadowy figure operating behind the scenes. Whoever or whatever it was, they had been manipulating the Council for their own purposes. The attacks on Earth had been too precise, too coordinated. This wasn't just a conflict of resources. It was something far more sinister. "Admiral, we've detected a massive energy signature coming from the Kitor flagship," came the voice of Lieutenant Marcus Day, breaking into Walker's thoughts. "It's not like anything we've seen before. It's enormous." Walker's instincts kicked in. He turned to his console, pulling up the data. The energy signature was unlike any known weapon in human or alien arsenals. The readings suggested a massive destabilization of quantum fields, a device capable of altering the very fabric of space-time itself. It was a weapon of unimaginable power, one that could wipe out entire fleets with a single strike. "Redirect all stealth ships to intercept. We can't let them activate that weapon," Walker ordered. His voice was calm, but the weight of the decision hit him like a physical blow. If the Keter had developed such a weapon, humanity would be facing an existential threat. And if the Council was working together to deploy it, the consequences would be catastrophic. As the human fleet moved into position, Walker's mind raced through the possibilities. If the Keter weapon was as powerful as the data suggested, it could not only destroy the human fleet, but also create a rift in space-time that could tear apart the solar system. And that was just the beginning. Walker knew that once the Keter unleashed the weapon, the other Council species would follow suit, creating a chain reaction that could devastate everything humanity had fought for. "Admiral," Commander Reynolds spoke urgently, her voice cutting through the tension. "We've got an incoming transmission from Earth. They're calling for reinforcements, but the signal is encrypted. It's strange." Walker's brow furrowed. Earth had been sending out encrypted signals for weeks, but this one was different. Something in Reynolds' tone made him uneasy. He knew the Council had advanced technology, but if this was a trap, they could be walking right into it. "Decrypted, now," he ordered, moving toward the communication terminal. His mind raced as the encryption crackled to life, revealing the message hidden within. What he saw sent a chill down his spine. "Walker, stop. They know. They've known all along. We've been compromised. There's more at play here than you understand. The enemy isn't just the Council. There's something worse. They've infiltrated Earth." The message ended abruptly, leaving more questions than answers. The implications were terrifying. Earth had been compromised. Who was the real enemy? Were they allies of the Council or something far darker? "Commander Reynolds," Walker said, his voice steady but laced with urgency, "scramble all ships. Prepare for a full-scale offensive. If the Keter launch that weapon, we will retaliate with everything we've got. But we're going to need to get to the truth. Now, find out what Earth knows. Find out who they're talking about. They're not just talking about the Council, are they?" Reynolds' face tightened. "No, sir. They're talking about something far worse. I'll get our best analysts on it." Walker nodded, his mind spiraling through the possibilities. For years, humanity had fought its wars with the assumption that they were the victims, the oppressed, the ones who had been taken advantage of. Now, everything he had believed about the conflict was being turned upside down. Earth had fought for survival, but what if the true enemy wasn't the Council at all? What if there was a deeper, darker force operating from the shadows, manipulating the Council and humanity, like pawns in a game they couldn't see? As the fleet moved into position, Walker felt the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. He wasn't just leading a battle anymore. He was leading humanity's survival in a war that was far larger than anyone had imagined. There were forces out there that were willing to destroy everything humanity had built, and they had been waiting for the right moment to strike. The silence of space now felt suffocating, the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. With every passing second, the possibility of an even greater conflict loomed closer. And as the human fleet moved into position for what was sure to be the largest battle in history, Walker knew one thing for certain. The war was far from over. He could hear the hum of the fleet's engines, the steady pulse of the battle that awaited them. But in his heart, there was a quiet realization. The true test of humanity's strength wasn't just about defeating the Council. It was about overcoming whatever force was pulling the strings from behind the scenes. And if humanity failed to uncover the truth in time, it might be the last battle they ever fought. The dark revelation. The black expanse of space seemed endless as the human fleet prepared for the impending battle. Admiral Walker stood at the helm, his gaze fixed on the holographic displays, his thoughts racing through the fractured message from Earth. The encrypted transmission had shaken him to his core. It spoke of a threat so hidden, so deeply entrenched, that even humanity's best minds had failed to detect it. Someone had infiltrated Earth, someone with the power to manipulate events from the shadows. But who could this enemy be? And how had they been allowed to operate undetected for so long? "Admiral, we've decrypted more of the signal," Commander Reynolds reported, breaking his thoughts. It's a warning. We're not dealing with the Ketur alone. There's another faction, something far older and more powerful. We think they've been controlling the Council from behind the scenes. They call themselves the Equorum. The name was unfamiliar, but the way Reynolds said it made Walker's blood run cold. The Equorum sounded ancient, like a name whispered in fear by those who had seen the true depth of their power. There were no records of such a species, no mention in any galactic database. It was as if they had erased all traces of their existence. "Tell me everything," Walker said, his voice low and tense. Reynolds continued, her voice steady but laced with disbelief. "We don't know much yet, but the data we've uncovered suggests that the Equorum have been manipulating the Galactic Council for centuries. They've been orchestrating wars, feeding conflict, and profiting off the chaos. The Ketur are just their latest pawns, but the Equorum's reach extends far beyond that. The Council wasn't just a peacekeeping force, Admiral. It was a carefully constructed facade. The truth is, they've been using humanity as an experiment, a test subject for a much larger agenda." Walker's mind reeled, a hidden faction controlling the Council. The very same council that humanity had fought to join, believing it was a beacon of peace and unity in the galaxy. The weight of this revelation was almost too much to bear, but there was something even more chilling. If the Equorum had been pulling the strings for centuries, what else had they been hiding? And more importantly, what did they want with Earth? "We need to know more," Walker muttered, his gaze darkening. "Prepare a reconnaissance team. I want to know everything there is to know about the Equorum." "We've already dispatched a covered unit to the Ketur flagship," Reynolds replied, "but it will take time for them to gather any useful intelligence. The Ketur have fortified their ship with quantum shields, and their communication systems are heavily encrypted." Walker nodded, his eyes narrowing. Time was running out. The Ketur were already preparing to launch their devastating weapon, and every moment spent chasing down the truth felt like a wasted opportunity. Humanity had fought for so long, struggled through countless battles, and now, just when they had begun to taste victory, they were faced with an enemy far more dangerous than they could have imagined. "Sir," Lieutenant Day's voice cut through the tension, "the Ketur flagship is sending out a distress signal. It's a trap." A cold chill ran down Walker's spine. A distress signal. From the very ship that had been preparing to obliterate Earth, it didn't make sense. It had to be a trick. Another manipulation designed to buy the Equorum more time. Or worse, lure the human fleet into a trap. "Abort the recon mission," Walker snapped. "Tell our fleet to hold position. were not falling for their tricks. But even as he gave the order, doubt gnawed at him. If the Ketor were in trouble, could it be part of the Ekrim's plan to push humanity into a corner? Or was there something else at play here? Something more dangerous than the Council, more insidious than even the Ketor? "Sir, we've just received an unexpected transmission from the Ketor flagship," Reynolds said, her voice strained. "It's the Ekrim. They're speaking directly to us." Walker's heart skipped a beat. The Ekrim had never communicated directly with humanity. In fact, until now there had been no evidence of their existence. The mere thought of them speaking openly to the human fleet felt surreal, like something out of a nightmare. But now, the reality of it was crashing down on him. "Put it through," Walker ordered, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside him. The holographic display flickered, and a figure appeared before them. It was humanoid but alien, its features smooth and almost ethereal. Its eyes were deep pools of darkness, yet they gleamed with an unsettling intelligence. The being's presence seemed to fill the entire room, an oppressive weight that sent a chill through the crew. This was no ordinary species. This was a being who had mastered the art of manipulation, someone who had studied humanity for far longer than Walker could comprehend. "I am Jaquel of the Ekrim," the figure said, its voice smooth and cold, like the whisper of wind through an ancient tomb. "You've come far, Admiral Walker, but you are too late. Humanity is already ours." The words hit Walker like a physical blow. Humanity had always been the underdog in this war, fighting for survival, for its very place in the galaxy. But now, this ancient faction was claiming victory without a single shot fired. It was a moment of cold realization. Humanity's fight had never been about winning. It had always been about being manipulated into playing a game that had been rigged from the start. "We don't belong to anyone," Walker shot back, his voice filled with defiance. "We are not your pawns, Jaquel. We never were." Jaquel's smile was chilling, almost mocking. "You misunderstand, Admiral. You were never meant to be our pawns. You were meant to be our greatest weapon. Humanity's ingenuity, your resilience, your capacity for destruction. It was always going to be used to further our goals. And now, the time has come for you to play your part." Walker clenched his fists, his mind racing. What had humanity been turned into? A weapon? A tool for some ancient faction to control the galaxy? It was too much to process, too much to accept. But one thing was clear. This war was no longer just about survival. It was about reclaiming control. Humanity could no longer be a pawn in someone else's game. It had to rise, take back what was theirs, and dismantle the Ekrim's influence once and for all. "We'll never serve you," Walker said, his voice firm and resolute. "If this is your idea of a victory, then you've gravely underestimated humanity." Jaquel's expression flickered, and for a brief moment, there was a glimmer of something like amusement. "We shall see, Admiral. The end is coming. And you, humanity, will be the one to bring it." As the transmission ended, Walker was left staring at the empty void of space, his heart pounding in his chest. The threat was clear, but the path ahead was anything but certain. Humanity's future was now in their hands. They had been manipulated, used as pawns in a galactic chess game. But now it was time for them to turn the tables. "Commander," Walker said, his voice steady with determination, "prepare the fleet. We go on the offensive. We take back what is ours. The Ekrim won't control us any longer." And as the human fleet moved into position for what was sure to be a battle unlike any before, Walker knew that this fight was not just for the future of humanity. It was for the future of the galaxy itself. The Ekrim had underestimated the one thing they could never comprehend, the unyielding strength of human will. And now, they would learn that mistake all too well. The battle for the future. The moment the human fleet engaged warp, Admiral Walker could feel the weight of what was at stake pressing down on him. This was no longer a simple fight for survival. It was a battle for humanity's very soul, for the future of everything they had built. The encrypted transmission from the Ekarim still rang in his ears. They had claimed humanity as their weapon, as their puppet, but what they failed to understand was the one thing they had underestimated: humanity's insatiable desire for freedom. "We'll show them what it means to underestimate us," Walker muttered under his breath, his gaze locked onto the war room's holographic map, where the positions of both the Kitor and Ekarim forces were displayed. Around him, the officers of the fleet were tense, their faces drawn and determined. The revelations of the last few days had shaken them to their core. The very council they had once believed in had been a facade, manipulated by the Ekarim for centuries. And yet, despite all of this, humanity was still standing, fighting with the fury of those who knew what was at stake, who knew that they could not lose this war, not just for their survival, but for their freedom. "Admiral," Commander Reynolds said, her voice steady but filled with urgency, "we've located the Kitor flagship. It's been hidden behind a dense asteroid field. The Ekarim have positioned their main fleet in orbit around a nearby gas giant. They're waiting for us." Walker's eyes narrowed. "We'll hit them before they can organize. Prepare a full strike force. We'll split the fleet into 3 groups, one to engage the Kitor flagship, one to disrupt the Ekarim's command ship, and one to protect our flanks. We move in 15 minutes." The crew worked swiftly, each officer knowing their place, their roles as critical as the very mission they were undertaking. The assault would be brutal, but it was the only way to ensure the human fleet wasn't overwhelmed by the combined might of the Kitor and the Ekarim. Walker's heart was heavy, knowing that no matter the outcome, the galaxy would never be the same again. Minutes later, the fleet emerged from warp. The battlefield sprawled before them in the cold expanse of space. The Kitor flagship, massive and menacing, loomed like a dark monolith in the distance. The Ekarim fleet, more numerous than Walker had expected, formed a defensive perimeter around the gas giant. It was a strategy designed to protect their vital command ship, but the sheer size and power of the human fleet meant they couldn't afford to underestimate the attack. "Admiral," Reynolds said, her voice tense with the gravity of the situation, "the Kitor are opening fire. The Ekarim are holding back, waiting for us to make the first move." Walker's pulse quickened. This was it, the opening salvo of what would likely be the defining battle of humanity's future. "Give the order. Open fire," he commanded. The roar of the battle began immediately, a thundering cacophony of energy blasts and explosions. Walker could feel the vibrations of his own ship as the first hits rocked it. But the human fleet was well prepared, and each ship responded with precision, their weapons lighting up the blackness of space with a fury that mirrored humanity's defiance. But as the battle raged, something unexpected happened. A series of flashes erupted from the Ekarim command ship, as though it had unleashed some kind of weapon designed to disrupt the human fleet's systems. Walker's eyes darted to the readout. "What the hell?" Commander Reynolds shouted, her fingers dancing across the console in panic. "We're losing power. The Ekarim ship is emitting a pulse that's scrambling our navigation and targeting systems." "Damn it!" Walker cursed under his breath. This was no ordinary weapon. The Ekarim had anticipated their every move, and now they were attacking humanity's very ability to fight. It was a tactical maneuver so perfect that it could have only come from an ancient race, with centuries of manipulation behind them. "Can we fight through it?" Walker demanded. "We're losing shields," Reynolds replied. "Our targeting systems are offline. It's a direct hit to our core systems. We can't keep up with the Kitor." Walker's eyes scanned the battlefield. The Kitor flagship was advancing, its weapons tracking them with unnerving accuracy. But amidst the chaos, Walker saw something else. A faint signal. A brief flicker of communication that cut through the interference, too faint to ignore. "It's a message," Reynolds said, analyzing the signal. "It's coming from the Kitor ship." "Put it through," Walker ordered. A distorted image appeared in the war room, the face of a Kutur commander, grim, his skin dark and reptilian, his eyes filled with a cold resolve. He stared directly at Walker, his voice sharp and filled with disdain. "You cannot win, human. You are nothing but a tool, a weapon created to destroy. The Ekarim will crush you. You were never meant to be anything more. Don't you get it?" Walker shot back. "We're done being someone's weapon. We fight for ourselves now." The Kutur commander sneered. "You are too arrogant, Admiral. Your people will fall, and you will be the ones to bring the end." Before Walker could respond, the Kutur ship fired, unleashing a volley of high-powered plasma shots directly at the human fleet. The impact sent shockwaves through the surrounding ships. Walker's flagship shook violently, systems blinking out of operation with each successive hit. The Ekarim's pulse weapon was now too strong, pushing the human fleet to the brink of destruction. But in the midst of the chaos, something strange happened. Walker felt a surge of clarity, a sudden realization that cut through the fear and confusion. The human fleet, though technologically inferior in some respects, had something that the Kutur and Ekarim couldn't predict. A spirit of defiance, a will to survive. "Commander, prepare the emergency maneuver," Walker ordered, his voice filled with sudden determination. "We'll turn their weapon against them." Reynolds hesitated for only a moment, then nodded. "It's risky, but it might work. We'll need to channel the energy surge through our auxiliary power grid." With one swift motion, Reynolds activated the maneuver. The human fleet, despite being crippled by the pulse weapon, coordinated their remaining power into a single focused attack. The charge surged through their auxiliary systems, building to a crescendo of energy. They had no choice now but to take a massive risk, one that could either end the battle in victory or destroy them all. "Fire everything we've got," Walker shouted. In an instant, the fleet unleashed a barrage of concentrated energy blasts, synchronized perfectly to exploit the weaknesses in the Ekarim's defenses. The explosion that followed was blinding, a massive shockwave that reverberated through space. The Ekarim command ship erupted in a fiery bloom of light, the force of the blast destabilizing their entire fleet. Walker's heart raced as he watched the devastation unfold. The Kutur flagship began to falter, its shields buckling under the combined assault from the human fleet. But the battle was far from over. The Ekarim had not yet revealed their full strength. "Admiral, we've got incoming reinforcements," Reynolds shouted, her voice filled with alarm. Walker glanced at the display. More Ekarim ships, more powerful than anything he had anticipated, were warping into the battle, their sheer numbers threatening to overwhelm them. The fight for humanity's survival had only just begun, and now, more than ever, Walker knew one truth. This was not just a battle for their future. This was a fight for their very existence. "Brace for impact," Walker commanded, his voice calm, despite the overwhelming odds. "We're not backing down. Not now. Not ever." And with that, the human fleet charged forward into the unknown, determined to make one final stand.